Hi, Assalamualaikum and greetings to everyone. This is Bio 330, Chapter 3, Community Ecology, Part 2. This video is the continuation topic from a previous part, which is a community interaction. There are several types of community interaction such as predation, herbivory, parasitism, which include the pathogens, competitions, commensalism, and mutualisms. So let's begin with the predation, herbivory, and parasitisms. All of these three interactions are symbolized as positive-negative relationships, where the positive will gain the benefits or win, while the other individual with the negative effect will be harmed or lost. So what is basically predation, herbivory, and parasitisms? Predation is the process of consuming one organism, known as the prey, by another organism known as the predator. Meanwhile, the herbivory is where the consumption of plant materials by the animals. Parasitisms may live or feed within the body of the host and eventually cause the death to the host. All of them, as you can see, they are in the same manner of interaction where one will be win, the other species will lost. Predators have adaptations such as claws, sharp teeth, fangs, stingers or poisons that help them to catch and subdue or simply chew the prey. In addition, most predators pursue their prey are fast and agile. Somehow, they can also camouflage within their environment to distract the prey before ambush and trapping the prey. Here is the pictures of predation-prey interaction. As you can see here, the cheetah is pursuing the hare, the tiger catching the prey, and this is the camouflage tactics. Alright, the prey, either the animals or plant, evolve various defense mechanisms and adaptation after repeated encounter with the predators. In animals, for instance, the prey used active defenses, behavioral defenses, chemical defenses, defensive or adaptive coloration, synergy in between the chemical defenses and aposematic coloration, and also mimicry tactics. Meanwhile, in plant, most of them are usually practice the morphological or mechanical defenses and also chemical defenses to defend from the herbivory. So let's understand each of these defense mechanisms. The first one is the active defenses. Active defense, the prey are escaping or defending themselves against the predators. Escaping or fleeing is the most direct anti-predator response, but it is a very energetically expensive. For some prey, they flee into a shelter and avoid being caught without expending the energy required for a prolonged flight. Self-defense is less common, though large grazing mammals will vigorously defend their young from predators. Next is behavioral defenses. Prey either use the alarm call to warn the other species about the predator existence. Mobbing is a kind of harassment at a safe distance by prey or in some species, followed by the group attack. Apart from that, the prey may use distraction displays where they direct the intention of the predator away from the vulnerable prey, which is their nest or their young. Next defense mechanism is chemical defenses. Animals usually use a startling array of substances to perform a variety of defensive functions. Bees, wasps, scorpions, spiders, and some arthropods use chemicals to defend themselves, and these chemicals can be toxic, smelly, or distasteful to eat, as well as may kill their prey. For example, the irritant spray from the bombardier beetle and toxic mucus from the poison dart frog. Okay, next is defensive or adaptive coloration. There are three different coloration mechanisms. The first one is cryptic coloration or the camouflage, where the color of the prey blends with the surroundings, making potential prey become difficult to spot. The second one is aposematic coloration, which is a warning coloration where the prey advertise their poisonous nature using a bright color or high contrast pattern such as stripes. Last is deceptive coloration. Okay, is either the prey using a large fake eyes or false head that can apparently deceive the predators momentarily, allowing the prey to escape, or may induce the predator to strike on a non-vital area. So in this figure you can see that this camouflage in leaf-tailed gecko that blend their colors with the surrounding or the environments. Next is synergy between chemical defenses and aposematic colorations. Animals with effective chemical defenses are often brightly colored, which is either in black or yellow or red stripe. Predators are more cautious in dealing with the bright color patterns in the potential prey. Dangerous prey tend to be aposematic animals, for example, yellow jacket wasps and fire salamanders. The last one is the mimicry. What is mimicry? Mimicry is a phenomenon in which the mimic bears a superficial resemblance to another species known as the model. There are two types of mimicry, which is the Batesian mimicry and the Mullerian mimicry. Batesian mimicry is a palatable or harmless species that mimics an unpalatable or harmful model, while the Mullerian mimicry, two or more unpalatable and aposematically colored species resemble each other to make the predator confused. Okay, next is the defense mechanism by plants against the herbivory. The first one is morphological or mechanical defense. Thorns, spines, and prickles play an important role in discouraging the browsers. Plant hairs, especially those that have a glandular and sticky tips, play an important role in deterring insect herbivores. Some plants, such as grasses, deposit silica in their leaves, which this can give a benefit of strengthening and protecting themselves. This silica makes this plant too tough to be eaten by the herbivory. Apart from that, plants also practice chemical defenses, where these plants produce chemicals classified as secondary compounds that function in defense by making the vegetation distasteful or harmful to herbivores. They can produce the toxic secondary compounds such as morphine from the opium poppy, nicotine from the tobacco, and digitoxin from a foxglove. This compound can kill or affect the development of the herbivores. Other than that, they also can produce the non-toxic secondary compounds, but may be distasteful to the herbivores. For example, the secondary metabolites produced by the cinnamon, clove, and peppermints. Alright, the next community interaction to be explained is the parasitisms. So parasitism are symbolized as positive and negative interactions. Parasitism is a relationship in which the parasite benefits at the expense of the host by living either within the host, called as endoparasite, or outside the host, known as the ectoparasites. So in detail, the endoparasite acquire host by a passive mechanism, for example, the ascaris. Ascaris produce an egg that pass from one host digestive tract to the external environment before the other host accidentally ingests the egg. In contrast, the ectoparasite acquire the host by the active mechanisms, where, for example, the leeches, they first locate the host by detecting its movement in the water and confirm its identity, then attach to the host's external body. Okay, this table shows the differences between the endoparasite and ectoparasite. This endoparasite, from the word endo, means that the parasite lives inside the body of the host, while ecto means that the parasite lives on the surface of the host. Endoparasites are generally permanent parasite, while ectoparasite can be temporary, intermittent, or permanent. Endoparasite usually are holoparasite, while ectoparasite can be either hemiparasite or holoparasites. So what is holoparasite and hemiparasites? Holoparasite is also known as obligate parasite, where this parasite depends fully on the host to fulfill all their requirements, while hemiparasite is also known as facultative parasite, which depends only on the host for a certain requirements. As I mentioned earlier, endoparasite acquire the host by using a passive mechanism compared to ectoparasite using an active mechanisms. The mode of respiration for endoparasite is anaerobic, while the ectoparasite is aerobic. Endoparasite can cause severe damage, even death to the host, while the ectoparasite can cause less damage to the host. Example for endoparasite is the roundworm, tapeworm, while the example for the ectoparasite such as ticks, fleas, bedbugs, and also lice. Next is the brood parasitisms. This is very interesting interactions where it is a social parasitism and a breeding strategy among the birds. It is characterized by a bird of one species laying its egg in the nest of the other species, and there are no giving any parental care to the eggs or to the future offsprings. For example, the cowbirds, which is the host, is being affected by the European cuckoos, which is the brood parasites. In many cases, the newly hatched brood parasite ejects the other eggs belong to the host. So the host parent now will be giving more attention or invest more feeding in the imposter compared to their own offspring. The fitness and the breeding success of the host or foster parents are lowered by the brood parasite. That is why they are labeled or symbolized as positive-negative interactions. And now this is the defense mechanism by the host against the parasite. For some plants, the secondary metabolites produced are commonly toxic to the herbivores, also toxic to the parasites such as fungi and bacteria. But for invertebrates, the immune system provides a defense against the endoparasites. In birds, an evolutionary adaptation exhibited by many potential hosts is the ability to recognize the brood parasite eggs in their nest and eject them or simply abandon their own eggs at the same time. However, as a counter-adaptation to this host defense, some brood parasites have elaborate egg mimicry that tricks the host into accepting the brood parasite egg as its own. So this is very good counter-adaptation from the brood parasites. The next community interaction is the competitions. Competition occurs when two or more species rely on a similar limiting resources, and they may be subjected to interspecific competitions, and they are symbolized as negative interactions. This competition interaction manifested in different ways under natural conditions. The first one is the interference competitions, where it occurs directly via aggressive display when the individuals interfere with a foraging or survival of the others. For example, the competition for food between the lions and hyena, or maybe they can compete to mark their territory. The next one is the exploitative competitions, where these exploitative competitions occurs when the individuals use the same limiting resources, thus depleting the amount available to the others. For example, the shedding by neighboring plants and also the desert plants that compete for the water. So you can see here in this picture showing the differences between the interference and exploitative competitions. In interspecific competition, the population growth of the species may be limited by the density of competing species and the density of its own population. For example, if several bird species in the forest feed on a limited population of insects, The density of each species may have a negative impact on the population growth in the others. The species may compete for the nesting site or other resources that is in short supply. Classical hypothesis by Gauss stated that two species with a similar needs cannot coexist in the same place, and this hypothesis was later termed as competitive exclusion principles. Okay, now let's go into detail about Gauss and its principle on competitive principle. G.F. Gauss have studied the competition among the two species of paramecium in a tiny protist. All the two species grew well alone in a culture tubes, preying on the same bacteria and yeast. So you can see here from this graph, okay, both of these species of paramecium were grew in a separate container. So both of them grew well. However, when Gauss grew Aurelia together with Chordatum in the same culture tube, the number of Chordatum declined towards the extinctions. So Gauss concluded that no two species can coexist when the resources are limiting. From this observation, Gauss formulated what is now called as the competitive exclusion principle. Okay, next, the interaction among the competing species that shape the ecological niches. What is ecological niche? Ecological niche, it is a sum of the organism's use of the biotic and abiotic resources in its environment. It can be described in terms of space utilization, food consumption, temperature range, appropriate condition for mating, and requirement for moisture and other factors. And this ecological niche include the fundamental and realized niche. This fundamental niche is the entire niche that a species is capable of using based on its physiological tolerance limits and also the resources needs. This occur without any predation or competition effects, while this realized niche is the actual niche the species occupies and the resources the species actually use, and this realized niche is affected by the competition and also predation. Here is the table showing the differences between the fundamental niche and the realized niche. The fundamental niche is large in size compared to realized niche, which is small. Fundamental niche, where this area is there is no competition or predation occur. The realized niche is where the competition for resources and predation occurs. Fundamental niche has no limiting factors. The realized niche has a lot of limiting factors. Fundamental niche, also known as theoretical niche, while the realized niche is known as actual niche. Other words, the fundamental niche is where the area with pre-competitive means that the competition is not yet occur, okay, or no competition at all, while the realized niche is where the area has the competition, so it is called as post-competitive. Alright, this is an experimental evidence for competition in nature that shape the ecological niches. This experiment study on the distributions of barnacles along the intertidal gradients. These barnacles have stratified distribution that grow on the rocks along the Scottish coast, and the rocks are exposed during the low tides. As you can see here, the barnacles of Balanus most concentrated on the lower portion of the rocks, while the Catamelus are concentrated in higher portion of the rocks. However, Balanus sessile adults cannot survive on the rocks because they are unable to resist desiccation when the area are exposed to the air during the low tides. Therefore, as you can see here, the fundamental niche and the realized niche of Balanus is similar. Then, when the ecologist J.H. Connell removed the Balanus from the lower strata, the Catamelus population began to spread into this area. Thus, Catamelus could survive the lower on the rock of where it is generally found. It can be concluded that interspecific competition makes the realized niche of Catamelus smaller than the fundamental niche. Or in other words, without the competition, so you can see here the fundamental niche and the realized niche is different. The Caterpillar's fundamental niche is slightly bigger than the Caterpillar's realized niche. Okay, another evidence for competition in nature about the character displacement. Character displacement is tendency for the characteristic to be more divergent in sympatric population of two species compared to allopatric populations of the same two species. Sympatric population is the term used to describe population, varieties or species that occur in the same place at the same time, while allopatric population is the term used to describe population, varieties or species that is physically isolated from other similar group by an extrinsic barrier to dispersal. This is another evidence to explain the character displacement. Allopatric population of Geospiza fuliginosa from Los Hermanos Island and Geospiza fortis from Daphne Islands, which means from a different or isolated area, both populations have similar size of beaks. However, in sympatric population, the Fuliginosa and Fortis, where both species have from the same area in Santa Maria Island, there is a significant difference in their beak depth. These differences presumably enable the two species to avoid competition by feeding on the seed of different size. Okay, another research and evidence explaining resource partitioning affected by the competition in nature. Resource partitioning or niches differentiation is a process of natural selection that will force competitors to use resources differently in a way to avoid the competition and allow for them to coexistence. As similar species always seems to exhibit resource partitioning or niche differentiation where they coexist in a community. For example, the 7 species of small lizard of genus Anolis are often sympatric, where they live in a close proximity area and they feed on the similar species of arthropods. In order to prevent the competition, each species use a characteristic of perching site and morphological characteristic to adapt with their particular microhabitats. So this is the 7 species of Anolis lizards that live in a close proximity at La Palma Wood. Each species perches in a characteristic microhabitats where it distinguished by the amount of the sun they receive and also the size of vegetation. As you can see here, the distiches, for example, they perch on the fence posts and other sunny surfaces such as leaf, while the insolites, usually they perch on the shady branches. So this kind of patterns of resource partitioning will reduce the interspecific competition among the members of the community, enable them to coexist within a small geographical area. Alright, so that is all about the competition. So let's move to the next community interaction, which is the commensalism and mutualisms. Both commensalism and mutualism is grouped under the symbiosis. So what is symbiosis? Symbiosis refers to a variety of interaction in which two species, which is the host and the symbiont, living in a close association with one another. So there are 3 types of symbiotic interaction. The first one is mutualism, symbolized as positive relationships. The commensalism, positive and neutral relationship. And the last one, parasitism, which I have explained earlier, the positive and negative relationships. So what is meant by positive means that both will gain the benefits, okay, while the positive neutral means that one will gain the benefit while the other is unaffected. So let's proceed with the commensalisms. So commensalism is a symbiotic relationship that benefit one species and neither hurts nor benefits the others. In nature, individuals of one species are often physically attached to individuals of other species. First example, epiphytes are plants that grow on the other branches of other plants. So the host plant is unharmed, while the epiphyte that grows on it will give a benefit from a greater water use efficiency. The second example is various marine organisms such as barnacles that grow on a moving sea organism such as whales. So these passenger, the barnacles are known as the passengers, will gain the protection from the predation and free transport to reach new sources of food without harming the host. This is another example, the relationship between the cattle egrets and grazing cattle. So next one is the last community interaction, which is the mutualisms. Mutualism is a symbiotic relationship among organisms that result in the beneficial for both species. In nature, mutualistic relationship require the evolution of adaptation in both species. If, let's say, there is changes occur, both species may affect the survival and the reproduction of the other. The first example is aphids and ants, where these aphids are a sap-sucking insect that secrete honeydew as the waste product of their diets, while the ant will feed on the honeydew. In return, it will protect the aphids from the predators and parasites. The second example is remora fish and the shark. Remora will clean the parasite living on the sharks. In return, the shark will provide a free transport and source of nutrition for the remora. This is the last example, the clownfish and anemones, where the clownfish can safely nestle into the anemone's tentacles to hide from the predators, while in return, the clownfish will keep the anemones free from parasites and provide also the nutrients from their feces. Okay, from all the community interaction that have been explained, somehow there is an indirect interaction occur within the community. Indirect effects of interaction is where the species may not directly interact, yet the presence of one species may affect a second species or the third species. For example, here we have the interaction between the rodents and also the ants. Both species are eating the same seeds. Okay, thus we said that the rodents will have negative effects on the ants and also vice versa. But however, the presence of rodents which also have a negative effect on the large seeds, and these large seeds also have negative effect on the plants that produce the small seeds. Hence, the presence of rodents should increase the number of the small seeds. In turn, the number of small seeds will have a positive effects on the ants population. So, therefore, indirectly, the presence of rodent has the positive effects on the population size of ants. That's all for now. This chapter will be continued in the next part. Thank you. Bye bye.